Olá, pessoal, como estão? Tudo bem com vocês? Boa noite a todos. Vamos à nossa live de hoje. Vocês me deem o feedback se o áudio e o vídeo estão bem, tá, pessoal? Estão bons? Deixa eu tirar aqui o áudio do YouTube, que tem um delay. Só me deem o feedback se o áudio e o vídeo estão bons. Por gentileza, pessoal. Boa noite, eles vivem. Obrigado pelo feedback. Beleza, o áudio e o vídeo estão ok. Beleza, obrigado. Esses 2 temas, eles são bastante polêmicos para a maioria das pessoas, pessoal, mas para nós, que já estamos há alguns anos na plataforma e pesquisando, não é nenhuma novidade, né, pessoal, mas infelizmente para a maioria das pessoas, chega a ser até uma historinha da carochinha, né, as pessoas pensam que é uma teoria da conspiração ou algo desse gênero e não é, na verdade. Beleza. Essa é a verdade, né, essas 2 ma os 2 maiores enganos, maiores embustes para a humanidade, né, a farsa daí da Lua e de que a Terra é um globo. E há evidências bastante consistentes, pessoal, tanto na Bíblia Sagrada quanto no empirismo científico. Evidentemente, empirismo científico sério, né, de pessoas sérias que fazem as pesquisas, cientistas sérios, pesquisadores sérios, e não a grande maioria que se vende pelo dinheiro para continuar com essa farsa do homem ter ido à Lua e que a Terra é um globo, né, pessoal? Eu não sei se está saindo algum ruído para vocês, mas de antemão já vou avisando que o ar-condicionado aqui está com um barulhinho estranho. Eu não sei se está saindo esse ruído para vocês, pessoal. Se estiver, peço desculpa, mas não tem como eu corrigir isso, a não ser que eu desligue o ar. E onde eu moro é bastante quente. Se eu desligar, vou ter de ligar o ventilador, talvez o ruído seja bem menor, mas eu vou sofrer bastante com calor, então não sei se esse ruído do ar-condicionado está atrapalhando, incomodando vocês, pessoal. Mais uma vez, boa noite a todos, sejam todos bem-vindos. Essa é a terceira live do canal O Sentinela, terceira live, e como eu sempre afirmo, tanto nos vídeos quanto agora nas lives, o meu papel, o meu objetivo, não é apenas compartilhar o que eu pesquiso há anos, pessoal. E já tendo as minhas convicções, base firmada sobre vários assuntos, e compartilhar isso com vocês com o propósito de que desperte a curiosidade de vocês para questionarem, refletirem, pesquisarem e aí chegarem às suas próprias conclusões, certo, pessoal? Esse é meu propósito. Não, eles vivem, não dá para ouvir o ruído, ainda bem que não dá, porque aqui no para mim já está incomodando um pouco, mas eu infelizmente eu terei que continuar com ele, porque está muito quente, se eu desligar vou para o ventilador e eu vou suar bastante. Então, o propósito do canal é apenas pesquisar, despertar a curiosidade de vocês para a pesquisa, para a reflexão e, evidentemente, vocês chegarem às suas próprias conclusões, pessoal, ok? Nada mais do que isso. E a principal fonte de tudo isso, a base fundamental é a Bíblia Sagrada, as Escrituras Sagradas, tá? Isso é que tenho como base fundamental. Estamos 5, vamos para 6 minutos de live, vou esperar mais um pouquinho para que a plataforma, teoricamente, compartilhe. A live já está no ar, né, pessoal? Aguardar um pouquinho mais. Existem diversas fontes sobre esses 2 temas, pessoal. Inclusive, 90%, a live terá 100% de vídeos, pessoal. Tem um vídeo já que eu postei no canal, acredito que há 1 mês e meio, mais ou menos, 2 meses, sobre o livro do Eric Dubay, A Conspiração da Terra Plana. Eu já fiz um vídeo introdutório desse livro. Eu pensei em colocar o livro na live também, mas aí vai ficar mais longo ainda. Mesmo a parte introdutória, ela é grande. Mas já tem um vídeo no canal, pessoal, sobre essa parte introdutória do livro do Eric Dubay, o título A Conspiração da Terra Plana. Inclusive, Eric Dubay é autor de vários livros, como Conspiração Gênesis 6 também. Há vídeos no canal também há quase 2 anos, uns 2 vídeos que eu fiz sobre isso e não dei continuidade porque é um tema complexo e gigantesco, tá? Mas eu decidi deixar apenas os vídeos, são 11 vídeos, tá, pessoal? Vocês terão que ter paciência, quem quiser realmente ter uma informação um pouco mais detalhada, terá que ter paciência. São 11 vídeos, eu acredito que ultrapassará as 2 horas de live, pessoal, tá? É exatamente isso. Bom, boa noite a todos mais uma vez. 8 minutos de live, vamos começar, pessoal? Vamos dar início aos vídeos. Inicialmente, há 6 vídeos, 5 vídeos, na verdade, que eu irei compartilhar com vocês, que já estão no canal já há um certo tempo, tá, pessoal? Eu já havia postado já alguns até mais de 1 ano, outro 1 ano e meio, enfim, já estão no canal. Nós daremos início com esses vídeos e, posteriormente, compartilharei com vocês os vídeos que eu não postei no canal Sentinela. Tá legal, pessoal? Vamos ao primeiro vídeo. Lembrando que, se houver algum problema com áudio, vocês me comuniquem, tá, pessoal? Iremos ao primeiro vídeo agora. Irei já compartilhar com vocês. Só 1 minuto. Está compartilhando aí para vocês, pessoal? Aqui para mim está aparecendo. Me dê esse feedback. Se está aparecendo para vocês. Eu já compartilhei. Para mim aqui aparece. Boa noite, Priscila Oliveira. Um grande abraço, querida. Seja bem-vinda. Está compartilhando a tela com vocês, pessoal? Me dê esse feedback, por favor. para mim aparece que está compartilhando, tá. Então vamos lá. Eu irei falar pouco, pessoal, são 11 vídeos, farei apenas algumas observações nos vídeos, tá, pessoal. Vocês terão que ter paciência para ver e ouvir os vídeos, tá legal? Vamos lá. Se o áudio estiver estourado nos vídeos ou ficar baixo, vocês me avisem que eu faço o ajuste em cada vídeo, tá legal? Vamos lá então. Esse primeiro vídeo, pessoal, ele é autoexplicativo, né, a legenda em inglês e em português, e o mais importante, evidentemente, dele são as imagens, né, pessoal. As imagens, elas falam muito mais do que 1000 palavras, né, pessoal. As imagens por si só já são autoexplicativas, e esse é um dos melhores vídeos. Existem dezenas e dezenas mostrando que a Terra é plana. Esse é apenas um deles, pessoal. Já postei no canal já há bastante tempo, há 2 anos eu postei no canal. Bom, iremos agora ao segundo vídeo, tá, pessoal? Tenham paciência, porque a maioria dos vídeos são legendados, alguns são em inglês com legendas em português, e aí tem que ter a paciência de ler. Tá legal, pessoal? Iremos ao segundo vídeo. Só um minuto, já já irei compartilhar a tela com vocês. Esse vídeo é bem mais longo, tá, pessoal? 21 minutos. Também está no canal. Foi postado há 2 anos, está no canal Sentinela. São 21 minutos de vídeo, tá, pessoal? Tem que ter paciência. Eu irei compartilhar com vocês já já. Só um minuto. Vamos lá. Esse é o canal, coloquei os créditos, canal das trevas para a luz, tá, pessoal? Postei esse vídeo já há 2 anos. Créditos já foram dados. Canal das trevas para a luz, ok? Vamos ao vídeo. do Reino Unido, não é, pessoal? O equipamento é do Reino Unido. A Dog Can. Boa noite, Glenn Cris. Seja bem-vinda, querido. É o heliocentrismo mentiroso, pessoal. Essa farsa ocultista. Só lembrando, pessoal, eu não sou terraplanista, tá? Apenas eu busco a verdade e compartilho com vocês. eu não pertenço a nenhum grupo, mas os terraplanistas estão demonstrando a verdade. É claro que existem alguns modelos, algumas variantes de terra plana, tá, pessoal, mas isso eu não entrarei nesse mérito. Exatamente isso, eles divinazem, em hebraico significa engano. Exatamente isso. Corretíssimo. Eugene Christie também não faço parte de nenhum grupo de terra plana, apenas observo o óbvio, planicidade das águas e continentes convexos. Corretíssimo teu comentário, é exatamente isso também. Você não precisa pertencer a nenhum grupo, você tem que buscar a verdade está nas escrituras sagradas e também fontes externas às escrituras sagradas, mas a base é a Bíblia Sagrada e o empirismo científico verdadeiro, não essa mentira que é propagada. Eles vivem, as escrituras sagradas provam que vivemos num domo, correto, exatamente, seja uma cúpula, né. Nada entra, nada sai. Quando eu postei esse vídeo, pessoal, do canal, eu tive que tirar o áudio aí, porque deu direitos autorais, e aí eu editei colocando as músicas, né, pessoal, principalmente essa parte. Aí são símbolos que são criados em vários locais, tem como pano de fundo a agenda mentirosa dos alienígenas, né, dos extraterrestres. Nós sabemos que são demônios. Inclusive o satanista Alex Crowley, ele afirmou, né, contato que ele tinha com um demônio, ele fez o desenho, e ele disse que num futuro próximo, esses teriam uma outra denominação, seriam chamados de uma outra forma, e é o que ocorre, são chamados de extraterrestres, alienígenas, e são demônios. Aí a agência mentirosa da NASA, mas não é apenas NASA, né, pessoal, todas as agências, a agência europeia também, espacial europeia, comunga com a mesma farsa, com a mesma mentira, todas as nações. Juline Christ, a Terra tem a forma de um sinete. Corretíssimo. Isso é bíblico. Certíssimo. A Terra tem a forma de um sinete. Eles vivem, alienígenas são demônios, a ufologia é uma farsa. Correto. Essa é a agenda mentirosa deles. Esse vídeo já irá terminar, tá, pessoal? Terminando os vídeos que eu já estão postados já no canal há algum tempo, nós iremos para os outros vídeos que eu não postei no canal, tá, pessoal? Ainda tem muito material a ser apresentado, vocês têm que terem paciência, pessoal. Esses erros aí de português não foi eu que cometi, tá? Só para informar nessas legendas. É a Escritura Sagrada mostrando tudo. As tecnologias CGI utilizadas nessa farsa, chroma key também e outras, pessoal, que vocês conhecem. Até Photoshop utilizaram na farsa. Aí, pessoal, é o seguinte, o formato é exatamente esse. O problema aí é a disposição dos continentes, tá, pessoal? Esse que é o problema. Não é bem assim, mas o formato nós sabemos que é esse. A disposição dos continentes que é equivocada. Própria Nações Unidas, com o seu logotipo, mostra que a Terra é plana, não é, pessoal? Mas as pessoas não acreditam. Bom, iremos para o próximo vídeo. Só um minutinho, pessoal. Irei compartilhar com vocês já já. Só um minuto. Mais um vídeo do canal, tá, pessoal? Esse eu postei já tem mais de um ano, o real formato da Terra. Prestem atenção nesse vídeo, pessoal, também. Por gentileza.
لماذا جعلوا الارض كرويه؟ احنا راح نتكلم في حدود معينه، هو حدود العلم. اذا قلنا ان الارض كرويه، فالكره معروفه حدودها ومعروفه قاراتها وخلاص محدوده. لكن عندما نقول ان الارض عظيمه ممتده وحدودنا التي علمنا هي هذه القارات، لكن هل هناك غيرنا؟ نعم، هناك غيرنا في هذه الارض. الذي يسمونه القطب الجنوبي، لا يوجد شيء اسمه قطب جنوبي، بل هو جوانب.
Tudo isso que ele está falando, nós sabemos que é verdade. Esse canal, a chave mestre.
الارض ما بعد الجليد توجد بوابه عظيمه جدا الدول العظمى على علم بها، والبوابه تطل على ارض اخرى هي حضارات اخرى، منها ياجوج وماجوج. وللعلم البترول اللي هو النفط الخام، الكرود اويل اللي موجود في اراضينا هو انهار عندهم، هو بالنسبه لهم انهار تجري فيدخل في تحت الارض وفي باطن الارض حتى يصل الى اراضينا. ليس البترول هي بقايا حيوانات او عظام او ديناصورات من هالخرافات اللي الناس مصدقتها، ولا بقايا نباتات قديمه جدا، لا.
Interessante, né, pessoal? Falou a verdade. Bela mulher, boa noite. Um beijo para ti. Beijão, obrigado, tá, pela Você está assistindo. Beijo para ti, mano. Muito obrigado, bela mulher. Eu não posso dizer de quem se trata. Muito obrigado por estar assistindo. É importantíssimo, não por mim, mas pelo tema e o que é apresentado, será apresentado para as pessoas começarem a pesquisar, buscarem a verdade. O pior cego é aquele que não quer ver. Juliana Christ, Juline Christ, exatamente. Já iremos para o próximo vídeo, tá, pessoal? Deixa eu ler alguns comentários de vocês. Eles vivem, só vira astronauta quem for da Irmandade de Avental. Verdade. Eles mandam em tudo, né? A Irmandade de Avental mandam em tudo. Juline Christ, cuidado ao ficar ao comentário, oculta a legenda. Não entendi, querida. Não entendi o que você quis dizer. Francamente, não entendi. Fixar, não entendi. Desculpa, não entendi o que você está querendo dizer para mim. Me alertar, não entendi, tá? Eu espero que não tenha nenhum problema, porque os 2 temas já são bastante polêmicos, a plataforma não gosta. Mas eu estou arriscando pelo fato desses canais postarem esses vídeos há 6, 7, 8 anos, pessoal, e não foram derrubados. Então, evidentemente, a plataforma está tolerando, então terá que tolerar a minha live também, porque o que eu estou apresentando é exatamente o que eles apresentaram. Inclusive, esses primeiros vídeos foram postados no meu canal e eu não tive nenhum problema até agora. Iremos para o próximo vídeo. Muito boa noite, obrigado aos que chegaram e estão acompanhando a live. Iremos para o próximo vídeo. Esse vídeo é bastante interessante, pessoal. Também está no canal. Já irei compartilhar com vocês. Só um minuto. Só um minuto, pessoal. Já tem um ano que eu postei esse vídeo no canal. As estrelas no domo celeste, tá, pessoal? É bem interessante, um vídeo de 9 minutos. Vamos ver. Não existem planetas, pessoal. A Bíblia Sagrada afirma: não existem planetas, existem estrelas errantes. Acabar com essa farsa de planetas. Que no YouTube está cheio de propagadores do engano alien, eles dizem. Exatamente isso. Um vídeo bastante esclarecedor também, pessoal. Deve ter replicado para vocês um eco. Eu fui surpreendido agora há pouco, pessoal, o seguinte: o plano que eu tenho no StreamYard é gratuito e eles fizeram uma mudança no plano e eu não verifiquei isso, tá? Fizeram, acho que tem mais ou menos 2 a 3 meses. E agora meu tempo está bastante limitado no plano gratuito. E aí eu fui informado durante a live que não será gravada a live no StreamYard, mas eu creio que no YouTube fique gravado. Só que eu tinha fechado o áudio do YouTube justamente para não dar eco, né? Não dar eco na live. E agora eu estou num dilema se eu mantenho sem áudio na plataforma YouTube para não dar eco na live, não replicar, ou se eu deixo o áudio, pessoal, tá? Não estou nesse dilema, infelizmente, o StreamYard mudou o plano e o meu plano é gratuito, mas se não der para gravar realmente pelo StreamYard a live, vai ficar gravada no YouTube, só que será comprometido o áudio. Tá legal? Eudes José da Silva Silva, boa noite a todos. Boa noite, querido, seja muito bem-vindo à live. Iremos, pessoal, agora para o próximo vídeo. Esse é o último vídeo que eu postei no canal, tá, pessoal? Depois iremos para os vídeos que não estão no canal. Irei compartilhar já já com vocês, pessoal. Só um minuto. Só um minutinho. Já irei compartilhar com vocês. Esse vídeo, inclusive, pessoal, foi postado há mais de um ano no canal, o formato real da nossa terra. O YouTube, ele cortou uma parte do vídeo, alguns trechos, pessoal. Ele não comunicou se foi realmente por direitos autorais, tá? E aí foi cortado vários trechos. Então, o vídeo não ficou mais de forma integral, tá, pessoal? Vocês perceberão alguns cortes, mas foi a plataforma que fez esses cortes, tá, pessoal? É um vídeo bem rápido, 2 minutos e 55 segundos, mas bem interessante. As imagens falam por si só, não, pessoal, que a Terra é plana. Bom, dá para perceber, né, pessoal, os cortes que eles fizeram, a plataforma fez. Eu estou deixando o áudio lá no YouTube, pessoal, tem um delay por conta desse problema no StreamYard, em formato que não irá gravar. Eu abri o áudio lá no YouTube, pessoal. Terminar os vídeos postados no canal, agora iremos para os vídeos que eu não postei no canal. Pessoal, fiquem atentos, que esses vídeos são bastante esclarecedores. Aqui não s não apenas esses vídeos tratam da Terra plana, como irão mostrar também a mentira que o homem pisou na Lua, tá, pessoal? Fiquem atentos. Como também as mentiras na estação orbital, os truques que eles utilizam com CGI, chroma key e outras tecnologias, tá, pessoal? Iremos ao primeiro vídeo, são mais um, 2, 3, mais 4 vídeos, tá, pessoal? Esses vídeos são longos, alguns de 30 e poucos minutos, outros de 20 e pouco. Iremos ao primeiro vídeo. Eu já irei compartilhar com vocês, pessoal. Só um minuto. Tá compartilhando aí para vocês, pessoal? Vamos ao vídeo. Canal saindo da Matrix 77, tá, pessoal? Eu tenho que falar, crédito saindo da Matrix 77.
through 47, and Operation Deep Freeze 1955 through 56. Then he dies on March 11th, 1957. Then the Antarctic Treaty takes place shortly after his death. We see that the main treaty was open for signature on December 1st, 1959, and officially entered into force on June 23rd, 1961. Meanwhile, okay, let's put the chronology here. You got, again, Operation High Jump 46 through 46.
Aí são as operações, pessoal. Prestem bastante atenção na legenda.
Operation Deep Freeze 55 to 56. He dies in 57. NASA's formed in 1958. Then after Operation Deep Freeze and whatever weirdness took place down there, everybody leaves Antarctica, and they go and form this Antarctic Treaty and put that into place in 1961. The original signatories were the 12 countries active in Antarctica during the International Geophysical Year 1957 to 58. The 12 countries that had significant interests in Antarctica at the time were Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and of course the United States. These countries had established over 50 Antarctic stations for the International Geophysical Year. The treaty was a diplomatic expression of the operational and scientific cooperation that had been achieved on the ice. Something happened down there after Operation Deep Freeze, and presumably about the time that Admiral Byrd died. So all these nations that I just talked about here, they leave there, they come back, they sign this Antarctic Treaty. At the same time, NASA's formed, and right away, the United States and Russia start launching high-altitude nuclear bombs in the atmosphere. Now, I can see why the people will put on a conspiracy hat at this point, because if they're trying to avoid a conspiracy, they're not helping with the names. You've heard me say it before. I'm going to say it again. You got Operation High Jump, Operation Deep Freeze. NASA's formed, they signed this Antarctic Treaty, and then when you look at the high-altitude nuclear bomb tests that began here, I'm going to go ahead and read Operation Dominic here. Operation Dominic was a series of 31 nuclear test explosions with a 38.1 megaton total yield conducted in 1962 by the United States in the Pacific. This test series was scheduled quickly in order to respond in kind to the Soviet resumption of testing after the tacit 1958-61 test moratorium. Most of these shots were conducted with free-fall bombs dropped from B-52 bomber aircraft. 20 of these shots were to test new weapons designs, 6 to test weapons effects, and several shots to confirm the reliability of existing weapons. The Thor missile was also used to lift warheads into near space to conduct high-altitude nuclear explosion tests. These shots were collectively called Operation Fishbowl. Operation Dominic occurred during a period of high Cold War tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, since the Cuban Bay of Pigs invasion had occurred not long before. Nikita Khrushchev announced the end of a 3-year moratorium on nuclear testing on 30 August 1961, and Soviet tests recommenced on 1 September, initiating a series of tests that included the detonation of Tsar Bomba. President John F. Kennedy responded by authorizing Operation Dominic. It was the largest nuclear weapons testing program ever conducted by the United States and the last atmospheric test series conducted by the U.S., as the Limited Test Ban Treaty was signed in Moscow the following year. Now, check this out. If you click on Operation Fishbowl, we learn about Operation Fishbowl here. It was a series of high-altitude nuclear tests in 1962 that were carried out by the United States as part of the larger Operation.
Preste atenção, pessoal, como tudo é planejado, arquitetado, minuciosamente por eles.
Dominic nuclear test program. The Operation Fishbowl nuclear tests were originally planned to be completed during the first half of 1962, with 3 tests named Bluegill, Starfish, and Orca. The first test attempt was delayed until June. planning for Operation Fishbowl, as well as many other nuclear tests in the region, was begun rapidly in response to the sudden Soviet announcement on 30 August 1961 that they were ending a 3-year moratorium on nuclear testing. The rapid planning of very complex operations necessitated many changes as the project progressed. All of the tests were to be launched on missiles from Johnston Island in the Pacific Ocean north of the equator. Johnston Island had already been established as a launch site for United States high-altitude nuclear tests rather than the other locations in the Pacific Proving Grounds. In 1958, Lewis Strauss, then chairman of the United States Atomic Energy Commission, opposed doing any high-altitude tests at locations that had been used for earlier Pacific nuclear tests. His opposition was because of fears that the flash from the nighttime high-altitude detonations might blind civilians who were living on nearby islands. Johnston Island was a remote location more distant from populated areas than other potential test locations. In order to protect residents of the Hawaiian Islands from flash blindness or permanent retinal injury from the bright nuclear flash, the nuclear missiles of Operation Fishbowl were launched generally toward the southwest of Johnston Island so that the detonations would be farther from Hawaii. Araka was to be a test of about 1 megaton yield at very high altitude, above 1,000 kilometers. The proposed Araka test was always controversial, especially after the damage caused to satellites by the Starfish Prime detonation, as described below. Araka was finally canceled, and an extensive reevaluation of the Operation Fishbowl plan was made during an 82-day operations pause after the Bluegill Prime disaster of 25 July 1962, as described below. You could go on and read about Kingfish and all this stuff. Okay, so we got Operation Dominic, within which we have Operation Fishbowl. Now, with the tinfoil hat on, playing conspiracy theory here, the flat earthers are claiming, and I think it's a reasonable claim, that, you know, if that model is true, then we know we have a circle, the circle of the earth as described in the Bible, surrounded by Antarctica, the outer rim, that has a tube. You know, if that model is true, then we know we have a circle, the circle of the earth as described in the Bible, surrounded by Antarctica, the outer rim, that has a tube. You know, if that model is true, then we know we have a circle, the circle of the earth as they may have found the edge of the dome, presumably anywhere from 800 to 1,200 miles inland from the coast. Then everybody pulls out, signs this treaty, says nobody can go back except under the express guidelines of the international community that signed the treaty. So then all of a sudden the United States and Russia engaged in these high altitude nuclear tests, and the United States calls theirs Operation Dominic, within which we have Operation Fishbowl. Now, hold that thought. This is all happening. If you go and look on the Operation Dominic entry, you see the different dates. We're 1962. This is the early part of 1962. We're talking May. I mean, look at all these bombs going off. 25 April, 1962, 27 April, 2 May, 4 May, 6 May, 8 May, 9 May, 11 May, 11 May, 12 May, 14 May, 19, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is all before President Kennedy's "let's go out in the space" speech. But I think a lot of people don't realize that our first stop wasn't the moon. Even before we went to the moon, they were sending probes all of a sudden after all of this. Okay, keep the timeline in mind. Operation High Jump, Operation Deep Freeze, Bird dies, NASA's founded, Antarctic Treaty signed, Operation Dominic and Fishbowl take effect. And if you notice during President Kennedy's speech, he was talking about that they've already got probes headed to Venus.
And now, if America's new spacecraft succeeds in reaching Venus, we will have literally reached the stars before midnight tonight.
Wait a minute. We're already sending stuff to Venus and Mars? We haven't even been to the moon yet. And so I was looking into that, and on planetary.org/explore/space topics/space missions /missions to Venus -Mercury.html, And you can go through this site. It starts sort of from the bottom up. As early as February 4th, 1961, they're sending a probe, Sputnik 7. Russia sent this probe to check out Venus. The final stage of the rocket carrying Sputnik 7 into orbit failed, and the spacecraft was unable to achieve the necessary trajectory to carry it onto Venus. Then Venera 1, Russia, sends out another probe February 12, 1961. They lost communications while it was on its way to Venus. Then NASA sends up Mariner 1, July 22nd, 1962. Now, that's right in the middle of Dominic and Fishbowl that we sent out a probe to go check out Venus. It veered off course and was destroyed by ground controllers. So then Russia sends up another one, Sputnik 19, August 25th, 1962. The spacecraft made it into orbit, but the rocket's last stage failed, and Sputnik 19 was unable to achieve its Venus trajectory and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere 3 days later. NASA, August 27th, 1962, sends its probe. It says Mariner 2 was the first spacecraft to successfully fly by Venus at an altitude of 34,773 kilometers. The spacecraft discovered ground temperatures, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is during the time period that between August 27th, 1962 and December 14th, 1962, that we had President Kennedy's speech in September, on September 12th, 1962. So that's what he's referring to. We've already got stuff out there, and you can read about the other ones that were, checking out Venus, I guess Mercury also, and attempted probes going to Mars. Now, this is all before we've even been to the moon. So it appears that whatever happened in Antarctica, everybody got kind of maybe nervous or excited or whatever and said, okay, what is the deal? We've looked through telescopes. We've seen our so-called neighbors, Venus and Mars, through telescopes. Our assumption is the solar system is, set up in the Copernican model. And, but yet maybe they found a dome and they started to question all that. So the first thing they do is send out probes to go, wait a minute, what in the world? If we're in a dome, how high does this thing go? So they start launching high altitude nuclear bombs. And if you look at the videos on Operation Fishbowl and Starfish Prime and all those high altitude tests, it looks like they're hitting something up there. At least from a conspiratorial tinfoil hat wearing perspective, that's what it looks like. Now, this is what blew my mind. You can read more on all that if you'd like. To get caught up to speed on what's going on there. So I go to Lubbock, and I'm doing this conference out there at Jared Cressman's father's church, Pastor Dan Cressman, and we get to talking about this whole issue of the flat Earth stuff. And he goes, "Do you know what the name Dominic means?" And I said, "No." He says, "You talk about Operation Fishbowl, but check this out. I'm going to take you to, I'll put the screen share back up here. Take you to one of those name websites. I like using behindthename.com. Look up the name Dominic. And again,
pessoal, preste bem atenção nessa parte.
Let's just double check it here. Dominic, D-O-M-I-N-I-C. Look up Dominic, D-O-M-I-N-I-C, from the late Latin name Dominicus, meaning of the Lord. Fishbowl was part of Operation Dominic. It looks like they are sending high-altitude nuclear bombs to test the fishbowl of the Lord. The firmament. Yeah. This is definitely one of those things to make you go,
Werner von Braun, fez parte da Operação Paperclip. Vários cientistas alemães foram levados para os Estados Unidos, pessoal, e também para a antiga União Soviética. Operação Paperclip. Bem interessante, não é, pessoal? Bem esclarecedor. Iremos para mais um vídeo, pessoal. Sei que é um pouco cansativo assistir os vídeos, mas é necessário, pessoal. Vocês, por gentileza, quem puder, pessoal, compartilhem essa live, porque como ocorreu esse problema, eu fui pego de surpresa durante a live com relação ao StreamYard, e me avisou que não vai deixar a live gravada. E aí eu estou no YouTube também, mas eu não sei compartilhar a tela no YouTube. Eu estou com medo de ir para o YouTube e não conseguir compartilhar a tela, embora o YouTube não está compartilhando, eu não posso compartilhar os 2 streams ao mesmo tempo, o YouTube e o StreamYard. Eu não sei se será gravado lá no YouTube, pessoal, tá? Infelizmente ocorreu esse problema, e aí talvez a live não ficará gravada no StreamYard devido a essa mudança de pacote. Eu tenho a versão gratuita deles, pessoal. Fui pego de surpresa durante a live. Tô lendo o comentário de vocês enquanto passava o vídeo, pessoal. Tudo isso é verdadeiro que vocês estão comentando aí, tá? Tudo verdade. Vamos ao próximo vídeo, já irei compartilhar a tela com vocês. Agora, pessoal, como eu fui pego de surpresa com relação ao StreamYard, eu não sou assinante da plataforma do StreamYard pago, né, eu estou no pacote gratuito. Como não será gravada a live, eu terei que as próximas lives terei que fazer no YouTube, pessoal, não pretendo pagar a plataforma StreamYard. Tá ok, pessoal? Fui pego de surpresa durante a live, a live não ficará gravada no StreamYard. Vamos ao próximo vídeo, pessoal, ele tem 28 minutos, tá? Mas é bastante importante. Tá bem do
For the most
canal
part, don't have
saindo
a clue. Want or need
a
one
Matrix
either. They're happy. I
77,
think
tá,
they have
pessoal?
a good bead on things.
But why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
The person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you know tomorrow.
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
A group of social criminals, these people in the space program. Nassholes, I call them.
And some of those people actually still believe the Earth is flat. So if a few of them want to believe that we didn't go to the moon, let them. It's not an issue that comes up in my presentation.
I mean, the Earth being flat, that's clearly ridiculous. Though I've actually been contacted by some flat earthers saying I'm covering up the fact that it's some Atlantean conspiracy.
NASA. As you can see, we got a nice red serpent tongue coming through there. NASA. And there's the UN flag. Also the symbol of the flat Earth. Oh, of course, if I say flat Earth, then you gotta be an idiot, right? That's what they told you, right? It's a ball. There's no Antarctica in this.
It's cold out here.
Yeah, it is. It's like the South Pole.
It's like a deep South Pole, if there was one. There isn't, though.
The Peters projection.
It has fidelity of axis.
Fidelity of position.
East-west lines are parallel and intersect north-south axes at right angles. What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time.
The legislature recognized that there is a debate about whether the Earth is round or flat. No. And let's encourage critical thinking by saying there should be a legitimate debate between whether the Earth is round or flat. Because after all, any idiot can walk outside and see that it's flat.
This is very important, what we're fighting for. Because I'm tired, I'm really tired of the manipulation. They do not tell the truth, they're lying. The history books are not true, it's a lie. The history books are lying. You need to know that. You must know that.
Leroy Santa Claus kicks and deals. It's a long fly ball going back. And the ball shatters the sky, bringing the ocean itself down into the stadium. Oh, Simpson just broke this dream's reality wide open.
Now there's going to be some comedians making jokes tonight, but I want to talk about the joke that's on you.
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes.
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes?
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked.
Okay, so here's the picture of the Earth from space. There it is. Since you were a kid, you've seen this image. But you've never seen it from that point of view. You know what? We adopted this whole model like 400 or 500 years before the airplane. 400 years before the airplane, pretty much. It was like beginning of the 1900s. They went to the North Pole in the 1900s. This is 1482. Nobody went to the top of the globe, to the bottom, or flew up, or built a skyscraper until, it's funny, back in the 60s when they went to the moon, this is the first time we actually had like an instrument of flight to actually go high enough to actually fucking check out if what we agreed to 500 years ago was real. So if they were wrong after 500 years, the question is, would they tell you? 1969, first lunar mission to the moon. You know, the first lunar mission to the moon wasn't so much about going to the moon. It was about having an event so you can go high enough to take a picture after 500 years to prove it was a ball.
And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon.
Mr. Armstrong, Bart Sibrel, ABC Digital. Wanted to give you the opportunity to swear in the Bible that you walked on the moon.
The 2 most watched televised events in history, the moon landing and the towers falling.
You have $5,000 cash. You can give it to charity if you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. I have the tape.
That'd be fine.
Why don't you swear to? Why not? Why won't you do it?
And it's funny, when you click on Google Images, photo of the Earth, you'll see 40 pages on Google. But it's always the same fucking crap.
For those that believe in the Bible does mention the edges of the earth, the 4 corners of the earth, and how Satan brought Jesus Christ to the top of the mountain and showed him all kingdoms of the world. How can Satan show Jesus all kingdoms of the world if the world is round? How can there be edges of the world if the world's a sphere? The Bible also mentions how the earth is immovable and is set on pillars. So for the believers that still believe in the ball earth, the round earth, got to reconsider. According to science and the satanic system, the earth is supposedly tilted at a 23.4 degree angle off vertical. And that leaves you at 66.6 degrees off horizontal. Now, what are the chances of that?
Most people saw the lunar landing and they swear on it because they heard on the radio. CBS put up screens all over Central Park, along with NBC, you know. so they can work with groupthink dynamics. Reality is reinforced by group dynamics. What you see in that.
The zero-G illusion also, that you see astronauts, they look like they're floating or flying in space. It's achieved through 3 different ways. One way is through zero-G planes. They're just Boeing 737s specially outfitted to do these parabolic maneuvers where they do a parabolic and then you have a zero-G like free fall state where it seems like you're floating for about a minute at a time. You can keep this going. The second way, when they're like at the fake International Space Station fixing things outside of it.
As farsas sendo apresentadas, pessoal. Os mecanismos tecnológicos que eles utilizam para o engano.
This is done in a pool, in a dark pool. They're actually underwater. And you can see bubbles rising out of the pool, proving that they're in a pool in many of their spacewalks. So the outside space shots are done in the pool. The inside, most of the inside shots are done in zero-G planes, and then some of the longer inside shots are done with a green screen and harnesses, so they just kind of float on a harness in front of a green screen. And with these 3 methods, they're able to produce the zero-G effect that everybody thinks is them floating around in space. But in reality, anything that goes up comes right back down. There is no point where you can just go up, 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 and then oh, I'm floating now, and I get to float through infinite space now forever. That's the illusion. That doesn't happen. You will always come back to the Earth. You'll always fall right back down.
No matter how high you go up?
As high as any non-NASA source has gone.
Jesus, you think he knows? I mean, it's proof right there. This is an official NASA photo of the first Apollo 11 lunar module landing on the moon. I mean, it's right there. This is proof, man. It's the picture's right there. It's landing on the moon. But the only problem I have with this picture is that it's taken from the moon. I don't know what the big deal was with being the first guy on the moon. It seems the camera crew was already there.
Hey, all right. Do you see Photoshop?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And if those of you think this technical difficulty was planned and think I'm scamming you, go do it for yourself. I'm going to zoom in on the Earth in Photoshop. You see the Earth?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go to Image, Adjust, Levels, and I'm going to bring the levels over here. And I'm going to bring the levels up. Uh-oh. What is that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. Why is there a square box around the Earth allegedly taken from the scientists on the moon in Apollo 17? Then you got other pictures like this, the blue marble, right, that come out. Okay, well, there's a big problem with the blue marble, and I'm going to zoom in here and show you what the problem is. These are all composite images where they are really not very good at Photoshop because they're using the Photoshop clone tool to replicate clouds.
That's an official photo from NASA. But plus, how many people think that's a photo? But plus, how many people think this is bullshit?
Now, a lot of people's first question is going to be, well, where's the edge? And I was surprised to see how easy that is to rectify, but I'm sure you get that a lot. How do you tell people when they come at you with, well, where's the edge? Why aren't people sailing off the edge or whatever?
So in the flat Earth model, the North Pole is in the middle and the Earth is a disk shape, and the Antarctica is all the way around holding the oceans in. And so it's a fact, if you're at the North Pole and you go south, no matter which Actually, it doesn't matter where you are. If you go south, eventually you're going to end up in Antarctica. But on the ball model, it's just a little ice continent underneath the ball. Yet,
Só mais uma vez, pessoal, desculpa interromper, mas tem que fazer essa observação. Vocês compartilhem essa live para quantas pessoas vocês puderem, pessoal. O StreamYard não deixará a live gravada. E o YouTube, eu não tenho certeza se ficará gravada também, tá, pessoal? Compartilhe o máximo possível essa live, que provavelmente não ficará gravada, tá ok? Obrigado.
in this model, it's all the way around you, holding the oceans in. As for whether there's an edge beyond the Antarctic ice plateau, this wall that holds everything in is about 100 to 200 feet tall. And once you climb up on the ice wall, it's a plateau of snow that just goes on and on and on. And the public and myself are ignorant at the moment as to whether there is an edge at some point, whether there'd be a barrier, a dome, as many ancient cultures have said there is, or whether it's an infinite flat plain and it's just snow, ice, wind, and darkness forever.
Stop what you're doing and listen. This is not a drill.
Oh God! In help! In help!
I can't tell you if what happened is an act of terror or an act of God.
Where the hell did it come from?
No idea.
You have people trapped in here.
Wrong, wrong.
What are you telling us? We're trapped like rats?
To prevent your poisons from spreading, your government has sealed you all within this dome.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
I think that even if what's wrong suddenly becomes right, the Army's just going to quarantine this place.
I want roving death squads around the perimeter 24/7. I want 10,000 tough guys.
Let me out! Let me out! I want
What's the most resilient parasite? An idea. A single idea from the human mind can build cities. An idea can transform the world and rewrite all the rules. Which is why I have to steal it.
Never recreate from your memory. Always imagine new places.
He's hiding something, and we need to find out what that is.
We gotta break out of here. Give him the kick. This was not a part of the plan. Wake me up! Wake me up!
Is the whole flat Earth idea, is that a new idea? How long has this been around?
No, the flat Earth was worldwide for thousands of years before this spinning ball Earth came around. The first person to think of the spinning ball Earth was also the first Freemason, Pythagoras of Samos. Most Freemasons trace their ancestry, if you will, back to Pythagoras as being the first Freemason. And that was 2,500 years ago. But his idea didn't catch on at all until about 500 years ago when Copernicus, another Freemason and Jesuit, wrote his book promoting this spinning ball Earth and concept. And then Kepler and Newton and Galileo, they took it from there, and now NASA and RASA and all the other space agencies, they're experts like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're continuing this heliocentric spinning ball Earth gravity myth that's been going on for 500 years, and they keep adding on to it now. Now you've got a Big Bang and evolution and aliens, and come out and say they've found life on other planets soon. They've already given us fake pictures from Mars claiming that there's a pyramid and Sphinx on Mars, trying to cement this alien progenitor propaganda into us.
So are you saying there are no aliens?
Not in the sense of extraterrestrials, since there are no extraterrestrial places. Earth is the only material plane. It's a plane, not a planet. And the planets are just stars. What we call planets today were known for thousands of years as the wandering stars. They differ from the fixed stars in their relative motions only. All the fixed stars in the constellations, they're fixed together in their patterns as they revolve around the heavens. But the planets, as they're called now, used to be known as wandering stars because they seem to wander their own unique paths. They just spiral around the sun, and they have kind of a spirograph orbit. You can see in one of my videos called the Ancient Flat Earth Beliefs, a model of it to give you an idea. But with the naked eye or with the telescope, you can see for yourself that these so-called planets are just stars. They're just lights in the night sky. They claim that the planets are physical terra firma that you can land on and potentially live on. And they also claim that the stars are distant suns in galaxies trillions of light years away. Now, these light years are things that they've come up with to try and convince you that those lights in the sky aren't as close as they actually are. They want you to think that the nearest star is actually 25 trillion miles away. And the reason they have to say this is because you can prove for yourself in your backyard with a telescope that the Earth is motionless. If we're really spinning around the sun 200 million miles every 6 months, we would be on the other side of the sun, right? So you can, by looking at the parallax change in the stars, see whether that's true. And there's not an inch in parallax change in any of the stars after 6 months of supposed orbital motion around the sun. So if that's the case, it's proof that we haven't moved.
See how the moon travels at the same speed and direction as the stars? They all move together as one, and that's not possible if you believe the official narrative that the moon is a lot closer to the Earth than the stars. They'd all be moving at different speeds. This is the camera, is the Earth, and there's no way that those stars would move at the same speed and trajectory as the moon.
Why all this deception?
So what we've got now is a godless Big Bang, a nothing for no reason in no time exploded and created everything. And then a bit of the everything turned into self-replicating bits, and life spontaneously created, and order and intelligence and consciousness all came into existence. So we've got this cosmology that comes from nothing. It's atheistic, it's nihilistic. It makes it as though humanity and Earth and everything here is just a cosmic accident. It's purposeless, it's meaningless. That's why this kind of atheistic materialism is rampant nowadays, because this kind of metaphysics is what we're being taught. So if we're just in the corner of some galaxy and the fingertip under the dust of the fingertip of the universe, then we don't mean anything. So what it does is it spiritually crushes humanity, so that we just think that me is all that's important, because this life is meaningless, God doesn't exist, we're just a bunch of primordial soup that turned into monkeys, and then monkeys turned into humans. They got us believing just a bunch of nonsense. The overall reason, if you're a psychopath like the people who do control this world all are, then what you want, your ultimate goal is world domination. The best way to achieve world domination is through propaganda and mind control. So the way to mind control someone, if you've got them in a cage since birth, You tell them that the cage is the only thing there is, and everywhere else you can't go. You can't go to the North Pole, and you can't go to the Antarctic without government approval and licensing. They have little tours where you can go and take little photo ops, but you can't go yourself and explore what's actually at the North Pole.
Maybe I'm being set up for something. Christoph, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Get away. See some of the world. Explore.
I like to be an explorer, like the Great Magellan.
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore. You want to be an explorer. This'll pass. We all think like this now and then.
They're pretending to.
Tell me what's happening. You had to shut her down. Thank you for your help. You're welcome, Truman. Locked it every turn.
E pessoal, é o. Retornar aqui um pouquinho.
Tell me what's happening. You had to shut her down. Thank you for your help. You're welcome, Truman.
Vocês conhecem, né? O CERN, lá que fica entre a Suíça e a França, né? E aqui o deus Shiva, tirando na frente do CERN.
Locked it every turn. They go around the door. They come back. They go around again. Mary, you're part of this, aren't you?
You are scaring me!
You're scaring me, Meryl. But his was more than just a vague ambition. He was absolutely determined to discover the truth. There's no way we could prevent him.
Hi, Christoph. I'd just like to say one thing. You're a liar and a manipulator, and what you've done to Truman is sick.
Well, we remember this voice, don't we? How could we forget? Sylvia, you think because you batted your eyes at Truman once, flirted with him, that you know him, that you know what's right for him?
Maybe I'm losing my mind.
I've been your best friend since we were 7 years old, Truman. I know that feeling when it's like everything's slipping away. And the point is, I would gladly step in front of traffic for you, Truman.
Where are you going? You really think you're in a position to judge him?
What right do you have to take a baby and turn his life into some kind of mockery? Don't you ever feel guilty?
Is that the best you can do? You're gonna have to kill me!
I have given Truman a chance to lead a normal life. The world, the place you live in, is the sick place. Behaving is the way the world should be.
He's not a performer. He's a prisoner. Look at him. Look at what you've done to him.
I think what distresses you, really, is that ultimately Truman prefers his cell as your goal.
Well, that's where you're wrong. You're so wrong. And he'll prove you wrong.
Créditos mais uma vez ao canal Saindo da Matrix 77, pessoal. Canal muito bom. Eu assisti esses vídeos há cerca de 6, 7, 8 anos, pessoal. Ainda há mais vídeos, pessoal. Há mais 4 vídeos. Vocês aguentam? Há mais 4 vídeos ainda. Bem interessantes. Eu recomendo, se vocês quiserem assistir, que são bem interessantes, tá, pessoal? Já irei compartilhar com vocês. Só um minuto, já irei compartilhar a tela, pessoal. Vocês aguentam, né? Beleza, então. Vamos lá, então, pessoal, dar continuidade, 2 horas de live, 1 hora e 56 minutos, e tem mais 4 vídeos ainda, pessoal. Somente esse vídeo tem 33 minutos, tá, pessoal? Mas eu recomendo que assistam esse e o próximo, que irá enfatizar as mentiras da NASA no espaço, pessoal, e a mentira que o homem pisou na Lua. Os 2 próximos vídeos, muito interessantes, eu recomendo que vocês assistam. Canal saindo da Matrix 77 novamente.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This is a diagram of the Mesa table, which sits on the lunar surface in front of the lunar module. At the bottom, that rectangular bag is called the equipment transfer bag, and that is the thing we are going to be paying attention to in this clip. Now, on the right, you'll see the other astronaut, and he's moving away from the ship, and he's fooling around with the UV camera. The astronaut in front of you is about to turn and go back towards the Mesa table and the equipment transfer bag, and when he does, on the right, you'll see the equipment transfer bag swinging. It's just swinging back and forth, and it's going at about the same pace. It shows no sign of the momentum slowing down. It's just going back and forth as if some sort of vent is blowing on it, but there's nothing that can be blowing on it if that's the moon. Because on the moon, there is no atmosphere, there's no wind, there's no air, there's no breeze that can be blowing that. This clip is from the closeout of EVA-1, Apollo 16, and the next clip is from the closeout of EVA-3, also Apollo 16. And we're going to see the same phenomenon with the equipment transfer bag. As soon as astronaut Charlie Duke attaches it to the MESA table, it starts swinging on its own again, as if it was being installed right over a vent. But then it gets really interesting because I think they notice it and they discuss it and then take corrective actions.
Hey, John. Yeah? Take a look. No.
Okay, Charlie, you should have... Charlie, you should have 7 Hasselblads and 3...
Now you're going to see Charlie Duke take corrective action. He's going to walk over to the swinging ETB bag. He's going to remove the camera that's attached to his chest. He's going to put it on top of the MESA table, and then he's going to put his camera in the ETB bag, and then he's going to remove the bag from the straps, and he's going to place it on top of the MESA table so it's no longer swinging from the straps. And there's obviously a voice we can't hear organizing the charade-like diversion you are about to see.
Where's the bag that the good old UV? Hey, Charlie, did you throw my camera away? No, I didn't throw your camera away. Where is it? Over there? Yeah. Okay. The bag that the what?
The bag that the what? He's obviously hearing a voice we can't hear who's telling him what to do. This is just a really strange scene. Now watch as he walks away. You'll see he no longer has the camera. You can't have any wind or breeze or ventilation on the moon. But this thing is like a perpetual motion machine. And this is how they corrected that motion, by taking it off the straps and putting it on top of the table.
You see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying. But maybe you've seen a demonstration of a bell under a glass jar. With normal air inside the jar, you could hear the bell clearly. But when the vacuum pump drew the air out of the jar, there was nothing inside to carry the vibrations of the bell. Nothing until the air was let back into the jar.
They can't forget your photo numbers. And this is clear tube number 2. Okay, just the fact you're almost driving without a hammer. But if you hand it to me, I'll get it in a second. I'm going to take a couple more shots of this boy. Get all in, I get the pictures. All right? Try it in real easy here.
The sounds in space, it's odd to have a hammer or a metal tool and bang it against something and hear absolutely nothing. You can, sound won't travel in a vacuum. So there you are outside and you could be hitting something, no sound at all.
In space, since there's no atmosphere, there's no air, if you bang on something when you're doing your spacewalk, you will not be able to hear that.
And this leads us to the dilemma of our final segment. All modern astronauts, such as Piers Sellers and Mike Massimino, claim to hear absolutely nothing when they're out on the International Space Station in the vacuum, banging away with metal tools and objects, whereas during the Apollo missions, all kinds of sounds have been recorded that should not be possible if they are on the moon in the vacuum of space.
Okay, just the fact you're almost driving without a hammer. But if you hand it to me, I'll get it in a second. want to take a couple more shots of this before we get all in. I get the pictures. All right. Got in real easy, Houston.
That does not sound like the spacesuit acting like a drum at all. It sounds like a metal hammer striking a metal object repeatedly with authority. Pictured is Alan Bean during Apollo 12 striking a metal core tube into the so-called lunar surface with a metal hammer. This is an interview with Apollo astronauts Alan Bean and Pete Conrad done by the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal. They are once again taking the position that the sound is coming through the hand and transmitting into the microphones in the helmet. Alan Bean says, "I would have said it wasn't possible." And Pete Conrad responds, "The other guy can't hear it." If the sound is coming through Alan Bean's microphone, then like his voice, it must be transmitted directly into the headset of Pete Conrad. So his statement makes no sense. Alan Bean's statement makes a lot of sense, since it would not have been possible in a vacuum. When Bean says, "I would have said it wasn't possible," he has science on his side. And he also has NASA on his side, at least up until August 19th, 2011. And this brings us to the most important graphic in the film. This is a web page that has been disappeared from the internet by NASA as of August 2011. However, this page, which was created for children, you can see the banner at the top, Lunar Science for Kids. This page directly contradicts the assertions made in the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal concerning the hammering sounds in Apollo 12, 15, and 17. This page talks about the science involved with sound on the moon, and it does so correctly. And that is why NASA has disappeared it from the web. The contradiction between the journal and this page was brought up in the very popular Moon Zoo forum. And that is where I first became aware of the situation. Reader Tom128 pointed out the contradiction between the site for children and the journal. And I went looking for the site for children and could not find it. I then went to my favorite research tool, the Wayback Machine at archive.org, and I was able to find an old version of the page that NASA did not clean up. And whenever I see information go missing from the web, it always starts me thinking. And this was the genesis of the film. At that moment, I became a NASA moon hoax researcher. You've seen the image on the right of the graphic before. That is Alan Bean hammering a core tube during Apollo 12. And this is the sound of such hammering. The graphic is problematic for NASA because of the contradiction to the journal, and the graphic is correct science. And I quote, "Sound needs something to travel through to get from one place to another. On the moon, since there is no air, sound cannot travel above the surface. So there are no sounds on the surface of the moon. When the Apollo astronauts were out on the moon's surface, they could only talk to each other and to mission control by using the radios in their air-filled helmets. Even when the astronaut in the photo to the right hit a metal tube into the ground with a hammer, no sound was made." All of the sounds so far analyzed were made by the astronauts as they were handling tools, but now we are going to analyze some sounds that are made a distance away from the astronauts. So what you just saw appears to be a smoking gun. That scene, which was broadcast live to the world during Apollo 15, shows astronaut James Irwin. He takes this cord or band off of a canister, and those canisters are in the MESA table, which Irwin is standing in front of. He unravels the cord, which has two metallic locks at the end of it, pictured here. They look like bullets. He takes that off, he unravels it, he reaches back with his right hand, and he throws the cord away. Let's take another look at it. So the argument has been made for the hammering that the sound is coming through the glove and it's miraculously getting into the microphones. But we don't have to deal with that argument because James Irwin releases the object and it hits the ship and he's not touching it. And that sound is picked up by the microphone inside the astronaut's helmet. And you can always tell that that's the microphone in play because you will always hear the sound of the suit air supply system in the background whenever the astronaut is transmitting, and you will hear this sound remain on for a split second after the astronaut stops transmitting. Both the outside of the ship and the inside of the ship in the cabin are in the vacuum because the lunar module does not have an air hatch. So when the astronauts leave the lunar module, it is depressurized. Microphones in the lunar module plug into the audio centers. The only voice possibilities are through the use of the headsets. They took off with 6 microphones, 3 Snoopy caps. Each astronaut also had a lightweight headset at launch. While they were on the moon and the suspect audio event took place, they were wearing their Snoopy caps. Communication cables, which are the umbilical cords that the astronauts plugged into while in the lunar module, as you can see from the checklist, were stowed prior to EVA. Also, looking at the same exact checklist, we can see that the lightweight headsets were also stowed prior to EVA. So there were no live microphones inside the cabin.
Even the one image that is claimed to be an actual photograph of Earth from space is called into question, simply because of a film that was released accidentally by NASA of Apollo 11 faking the very first picture of Earth from space. So let's have a look at that video.
Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period,
Pessoal, prestem atenção nesse vídeo. Ele é muito importante também, pessoal. Prestem bastante atenção. Agora.
one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond. Moments pass, and the oversight is picked up on by the clandestine third party, who quickly prompts them with talk. Immediately, Neil Armstrong speaks.
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger. We're wrapping in on Earth.
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private. Until now. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we were seeing. Thank you very much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
And we only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just off being beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
Blue gas, city white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth. And
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. It thus confirms that the stumbling block to their success was the lethal radiation of the Van Allen radiation belts. Since the same equipment was used on the subsequent missions in the 40 months that followed, none of them could have gone to the moon. They only increased their proficiency at staging them.
So apparently the moon is 238,000 miles away. But if you just put that aside for a second and just look at the moon, perhaps you'll notice this. In this example, only the clouds close to the moon are lit up, not the clouds further away. That indicates that the moon is much, much closer than we've been told. Because if the moon were 238,000 miles away, then all the clouds should be illuminated, not just the ones closest to it. And here's an example of a schoolboy mistake. This is a famous picture from Apollo 8, which is entitled Earthrise. It was taken from above the moon's surface, looking back at the Earth. The only problem is, the Earth appears the same size as the moon appears from the Earth. But the Earth is 4 times the size of the moon. So it should have looked like this. Somebody screwed up. Now, there will be some people who still think we went to the moon. I can't believe that there are still people who think that 1969 technology went over 400,000 miles, managed to navigate to the moon using computers that were orders of magnitude less powerful than the first iPhone, passing through the immensely hazardous Van Allen radiation belts, which, by the way, NASA cannot figure out how to get through today, somehow landed on the moon, spent a delightful few days planting flags, playing golf, riding around on dune buggies, and then took off, or rather levitated off the lunar surface, only briefly nipping back to pick up the person operating the camera, and returned safely. And not just once, but 7 times. It's a fantasy. The whole thing is a fantasy. Everything you saw supposedly on the moon was in a soundstage using Stanley Kubrick's perfected front projection technology. And I'm not going to spend much time. There's plenty of evidence to show that it was completely faked. It was complete fantasy. So here's a conspiracy theory. If I was on the receiving end of upwards of 200 billion of taxpayers' money, perhaps this is what I would do. Well, I'd spend a few million on some of what they call hero models. Space shuttle mock-ups that look the part, have lots of flashing lights and computer screens and stuff, but are not flyable. They'll end up collecting dust in museums anyway. Then I would have a few mock-ups that I would fly into space, but really would basically fly out of sight and ditch in the sea, getting destroyed in the process. Then I would spend a few million, perhaps even $1 billion. Let's give the taxpayers their money's worth. Perhaps I'll spend $1 billion or so on developing a plane that looks like the space shuttle. There you go, job done. No refunds. So let's change the launch profile of the space shuttle for my new classified one. We have a remote-controlled, full-size mock-up, basically nothing inside, just an empty shell. That's flown up on remote control, on essentially a big firework. Everything acts as normal. The booster rockets detach as normal. But when we get to the external tank separation, that doesn't actually happen. What actually happens is the tank and the shuttle fall back to Earth, where they ditch in the sea and get destroyed in the process. After the mission's complete, a space shuttle plane takes off from an undisclosed location and lands at an Air Force base in front of the TV cameras. Simple. Don't be ridiculous, Dave. You couldn't fake something like that. There'll be too many people involved, and the truth is bound to get out. Lam, 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 lam. The best example of space shuttle fakery is the Challenger disaster. In 1986, the shuttle Challenger exploded about 74 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts inside. Or did it? It turns out that 6 of the 7 are still alive and kicking today. Ellison Onizuka claims to be his identical twin brother, Claude. Yeah, I've got an identical twin brother, Claude, too. The Challenger pilot, Mickey Smith, hasn't even bothered changing his name. He's now Professor Michael J. Smith of University of Wisconsin. Now, Krista McAuliffe was a bit of a sneaky one. She was the Challenger payload specialist, quite famous for being a teacher. It turns out during her astronaut days, she was using her middle name, Krista. And now she goes by her first name, Sharon. And she's a Syracuse law professor. The Challenger commander, Francis Richard Scobie, is now Dick Scobie, which sounds like a rather unpleasant disease, CEO of Cows in Trees Limited. Judith Resnick, the Challenger mission specialist, again hasn't even bothered changing her name. She's a professor at Yale Law. And finally, Ronald McNair, another Challenger mission specialist, claims to be his identical twin brother, Carl McNair. What are the odds?
Interessante aí, pessoal, esse vídeo também. Sei, pessoal, que a live está cansativa, 2 horas e meia de live, a mais 2 vídeos, pessoal. E compartilhar em instantes, pessoal. Só 1 minuto. Também o canal Saindo da Matrix 77, tá? Vídeos de 7, 8, 6 anos, pessoal. Esse foi postado há 8 anos. Essa é a Agência Espacial Europeia, não é, pessoal? Todas mentem, né? Não é somente a NASA, a Agência Espacial Europeia, russa, chinesa, japonesa.
Your city of Houston, with its manned spacecraft center, will become the heart of a large scientific and engineering community. During the next 5 years, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration expects to double the number of scientists and engineers in this area, to increase its outlays for salaries and expenses to $60 million a year, to invest some $200 million in plant and laboratory facilities, and to direct or contract for new space efforts over $1 billion. from this center in this city. To be sure, all this costs us all a good deal of money. This year's space budget is 3 times what it was in January 1961.
The cost of the program, whose sole goal was to be the first to plant a flag on the lifeless rock just outside the Earth, if adjusted for inflation to the 21st century, was $135 billion. With a profit margin of just 7%, this would be equal to over $9 billion profit going to the privileged contractors chosen by their friends at NASA. $135 billion could feed 2 million people for their entire lives. It could also buy 2 million two-bedroom houses. Yet how could such an undertaking be kept secret, and for such a long time? To the latter, one needs only to remember that an unsolved riddle 6 years older, the assassination of President Kennedy, still daunts the minds of the vast majority of Americans. As a parent of a conspiracy, as his assassin being assassinated himself, the truth of the matter has still escaped history. In keeping a secret of the magnitude of the Apollo missions being fraudulently created,
T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong reported back when he received the good wishes. Thank you very much. We know it will be a good flight. Good luck and Godspeed. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6.
Since the beginning of recorded history, the human race has been at war. First with members of their own family, then their fellow countrymen, and finally nations at large. Yet perhaps the starting ground for all these conflicts lays somewhere deeper, within the very character of the human condition, in the dark, untouchable crevices of the human heart. It is said that the first iniquity of free will began even before the maiden pilgrimage from the embryo, preceding the very creation of the earth itself. in the forelife of souls in the heavenly realms. The dawn of warfare, some believe, was initiated by a fallen angel whose trespass against God was pride. In ancient Babylonia, in an age so long ago that the exact millennium remains in question, the Tower of Babel began construction. It was to be the single greatest achievement of the human race. A tower so tall that its summit would reach the heavens, and by it prove to the world that their race was superior. It would be God's irony that it would never be finished. Time passed, nations fell, a machine age emerged, and once again the ingenuity of the species which held dominion over all others unveiled what was at the time the most monumental accomplishment ever imagined, the largest machine yet constructed, an automation so mammoth and so revered even before its first demonstration that its only befitting name was Titanic. On April 10th, 1912, it set sail. It was boasted to be the ship that God himself could not sink. It would be God's irony that the very element that was meant to keep it afloat would cause it to sink. Water, frozen water, in the form of an iceberg. Not even one voyage did it complete. And then the next age embarked into the annals of human history, perhaps the last age, the space age. Competition for victor was unparalleled. Powerful nations spent billions in unabashed rivalry to outdo the other. The building of the tallest tower for the sole purpose of standing out among the races was never finished. The machine that was so great that it was said to be untouchable by even God never completed its first voyage. And finally, the crowning achievement of humankind, the greatest boast of the species, the event in human history most associated with pride in our own accomplishments, landing on the moon. 20 years later, and years behind schedule, the same space program couldn't put into Earth orbit a telescope with a lens that focused. And yet 2 decades earlier, a mission 100 times more complicated worked on its first occasion. With close scrutiny of the motives of the zealous Nixon administration, a critical examination of the entirely government-controlled press coverage, and newly discovered footage of the crew of Apollo 11 staging part of their mission, we wish to detail what may come to be the greatest government conspiracy of all time.
He was a national hero and was likely to be the first man to walk on the moon. But Grissom was also an outspoken critic of the space program and was quoted as saying, "Someone's going to get killed." Unfortunately, Grissom's worst fears were soon realized. On January 27, 1967, 2 years before the first moon landing, Grissom and his crew boarded the Apollo 1 capsule for a full-scale simulation. The problems began almost immediately. First, the capsule's communication systems failed.
You copy? No, I didn't read your Chuck at all. I can't read your Chuck. You want to try the phone? Yeah, we gotta get the moon. We can't talk between 3 buildings. I can't hear what you're saying.
Suddenly, the capsule burst into flames with the astronauts sealed inside. Tragically, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee lost their lives before ever leaving the launch pad. Gus Grissom's family believes the Apollo 1 fire was no accident.
I think it was intentionally sabotaged by someone. It's been a question in my mind, what was found in the accident investigation and how was that handled? Was the CIA involved or whoever? But it was done intentionally.
Grissom's family doesn't know who was responsible for his death or why it happened. But they say NASA knows the truth.
Gus gave his life for this program, and I feel like that it is up to NASA to come forward and give us a direct answer to what really happened.
Were Gus Grissom and the Apollo 1 astronauts victims of a tragic accident, or were they intentionally silenced because they knew too much? We may never know. The cause of the fire is still a mystery, and the capsule remains locked away at a military base. But Grissom wasn't the only Apollo critic to meet with a suspicious and untimely death. Thomas Ronald Barron was a safety inspector during Apollo 1's construction. After the fire, Barron testified before Congress that the Apollo program was in such disarray that the United States would never make it to the moon. He claimed his opinions made him a target.
Has there been any pressure on you by NASA? Nothing. We were, my wife and I were somewhat harassed at home when this first thing broke some time back, but it's going away now.
As part of his testimony, Barron submitted a 500-page report detailing his findings.
There was a real fear that the program could be stopped dead in its tracks.
Then exactly 1 week after he testified, Barron's car was struck by a train. Barron, his wife, and stepdaughter were killed instantly.
I believe that Thomas Ronald Barron was murdered because he had the truth to tell about the Apollo project.
Barron's report mysteriously disappeared, and to this day, it has never been found. Between 1964 and 1967, a total of 10 astronauts lost their lives in freak accidents. These deaths accounted for an astonishing 15% of NASA's astronaut corps.
To keep something that's alive wrapped up and covered over, you've got to eliminate all the people that can talk about it.
We now realize that perhaps the reason Neil Armstrong has never given an on-camera interview is because he doesn't want to lie anymore. What threats may have been made upon such honorable men or their families to possess their reluctant cooperation and later ill feelings towards perpetuating this still darkened hour in American history? NASA's highest-ranking official, James Webb, resigned without explanation just days before the first Apollo mission. Why, when he was on the threshold of achieving the greatest accomplishment of his career? All 3 Apollo 11 astronauts also resigned shortly after their return.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Ó, pessoal, 3 horas de live, 2 horas e 58 minutos. Agradeço a todos que assistiram a live e aqueles que puderam compartilhar também, pessoal. Humanidade não deixará a live gravada, como eu disse a vocês. Durante a live, fui surpreendido com a mensagem do StreamYard comunicando que não deixará a live gravada. E eu não tenho certeza também que o YouTube irá deixar, pessoal. Portanto, quem assistiu a live, agradeço. E quem conseguiu compartilhar também. Ok, pessoal? 3 horas de live. Essas são algumas das fontes dignas que eu compartilhei com vocês. Apresentam provas contundentes, evidências contundentes de que o homem não pisou na lua e de que a Terra é plana, tá, pessoal? Não há nenhum tipo de invenção aqui ou de teoria da conspiração, são fatos. E muito obrigado a todos. Uma boa noite a todos. E até a próxima, pessoal, se assim o nosso Messias e o nosso Criador permitir. Um abraço, boa noite a todos.